health-related information on the following show provides general information only. Content presented on any show by any host or guest should not be substituted for a doctor's advice. Always consult your physician before beginning any new diet, exercise, or treatment program.
Welcome to Accelerated Health TV and radio show. I'm your host, Sarah Banta. I'm a health coach, natural supplement expert, and a busy mom of three. Make sure you hit the subscribe button below so you're notified every week with my new podcast on Mondays and Tuesdays. And if you haven't already, join my free group coaching on Telegram with the link below. There is no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health. In addition, you will be a part of a like-minded group to support you on your health journey, in addition to truly taking control of your health. My goal is to reach everyone on earth with eyes to see and ears to hear my message of healing. So help me with that goal and share this podcast with a few of your friends who may need my help. Today, I am super excited. We have Dr. Bill Campbell back. He has earned his PhD in exercise nutrition and preventative health from Baylor University. He's currently a professor of exercise science and director of the Performance and Physique Enhancement Laboratory at the University of South Florida. Welcome, Bill. How are you today?
I am doing great. Thank you for inviting me back.
I love this topic. We're cracking the body fat code and the truth about body fat gain and fat loss. And wouldn't this be amazing if we could just go like that and get the physique we wanted, right? Well, I want to start. We're going to get into a whole bunch of things, especially these fat loss and weight loss drugs that people are doing. And but I first wanted to start with demystifying body fat. What is body fat's purpose on our body? I mean, if here we are, all of us want to get rid of it, but there's got to be some sort of physiological reason that we have this part on our body.
Yeah, I start that discussion with the concept known as essential body fat. So essential body fat is the body fat that we have to have so that our bodies can perform normal physiological functions. Females have significantly more. So their essential body fat is like breast tissue, the fat around reproductive organs. Typically, it's around 12%. Males have considerably less essential body fat. It's probably around, I think it's around 3%. So there's where I start that discussion. And then fat does produce, it's an organ. Some people would call it an organ, and it produces, well, one thing that a lot of people are aware of is like leptin. So the more body fat you have, the more leptin you produce. Leptin helps control chronic hunger levels. So body fat is an organ that produces molecules. It produces things that we need for normal physiological functions. So it's one of those things that if you have too much, which is where developed countries are currently at, that becomes unhealthy. But also on the other side of the spectrum, if you reduce body fat levels too low to where it starts to impact your essential body fat levels, that is also a non-optimal health state.
So I love that you're talking about leptin, and I actually just wrote an article on leptin resistance, insulin resistance, uric acid, the increase in fatty liver disease and obesity in the United States, and globally, and its relationship to processed foods. Now, what leptin resistance, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is when your body's fat stores start screaming at your brain, but your brain's not listening to the signal that it's full and it's got plenty of fat on the body. So if someone's obese, the signaling is not working. What happens with leptin if somebody has not enough essential fat? So they're the opposite extreme, way too thin without Have you looked at what the leptin signaling does when someone is low essential body fat?
I haven't looked at the leptin signaling cascade, but what we have done in a few of our studies is just monitor leptin levels. And for those that don't know, my career started in obesity research, and it's transitioned to where I study fat loss in people who are already lean or people who don't need to lose body fat for health reasons. They're trying to be leaner more for vanity reasons. So in that population, think bodybuilders or people who just want to be leaner than what you would typically find, that what we would typically define as average. And what we see in our research is leptin levels just get low. And we've even had the leptin levels get so low that they become undetectable in saliva samples. Now, saliva is not as good as blood to assess leptin levels, but when leptin levels get to be that low in a normal normal physiology, the person that's experiencing that will have very high levels of hunger. So you want there to be a given amount of leptin circulating, which helps control chronic hunger. And what you said, now, if you just wrote an article on it, you're more of an expert than I am, but I understand it the same way you do. In individuals with obesity, because adipose tissue synthesizes and secretes leptin, there's a large amount of leptin going throughout the body. And again, I'll just use the word, in normal physiology, that the brain would perceive that and say, okay, we don't need to eat. Let's regulate our hunger by lowering it. But there is what you call leptin resistance, and that's a brain problem. It's not a leptin secretion problem. The adipose tissue is doing its job. And what really, I studied this in grad school. What was really intriguing when they first identified leptin, they gave obese mice or obese rats, one of the two, one of the rodents. They injected them with leptin, and it eliminated their obese state. So everybody at the time early on was very excited. They thought leptin was going to be this miracle fat loss drug. And then when we did the same experiments in humans, it was ineffective. So there's one example. You have to be careful of extrapolating rodent data to human data. And there's the example that I always use for that. So yeah, just to summarize, my thinking is the same as yours. The brain is not, it's become desensitized. So there's some problem at the brain receptor level, the leptin receptor, that's not receiving the leptin message, the leptin signal, even though there's plenty of leptin circulating.
That's my understanding. And I remember there was a supplement on the market that was targeting leptin to see if it would help people lose weight. And they took it off. And I remember contacting the company after they took it off the market, and they said it's not working. So it's exactly what you're saying. So here we are talking about essential fat, which we need. But why does the body store the extra storage fat? And why do we gain fat so easily? And why is it so hard to lose?
Well, that to me, I always conceptualize that as an energy imbalance. So when you increase your energy, and we do that through excess food, the body has to do something with it. It would be nice if it stored that excess energy as skeletal muscle, at least in places where we'd want it to be stored. But the body doesn't do that, at least not very efficiently, and typically not without an exercise stimulus. So adipose tissue is how the body just stores excess energy. Now, it is interesting. Some people are able to eat more food, excess food, and not readily stored as body fat as others. And the reason that is likely because they just are able to lose more of that energy as heat. They have a greater thermic effect from feeding than others. And others are just that they have a what we would say a greater genetic disposition to accumulating body fat when they overeat. So that's also an important component here. Some people will say that people's genes will make them overweight, or that they have the obese gene. My interpretation of this literature is Some people are more genetically predisposed to gain weight when they overeat, but if they don't overeat, they will not gain excess body weight.
Right.
So that's it's just how the body prefers to utilize excess energy. And again, there's a big variability from person to person on 100 units of extra energy being stored as 100 units of extra fat in some people, or 27 units of body fat in somebody else. There's the genetic variation.
And you can go down a rabbit hole of it being gut bacteria. And you've heard about studies where they've done fecal transplants on people and not changing anything else. They've either gained weight or lost weight, depending on where that fecal material came from. So we're not going to get into that here today, but I want to go down the topic that in your research review of Body by Science, which I recommend to everybody. Your science and your reviews are easy to understand. They take these big concepts and really are easily to digest for just the layman. So kudos to you. I love all of your posts and everything that you do on social media as well. I always learn something new. And your last one, you discussed Ozempic, a semaglutide for weight loss. And I have written some articles about it. I've got people coming to me, Sarah, should I just do it? I just am so frustrated with my weight. And I live in Newport Beach, California, which rivals Beverly Hills and the Hollywood scene. So you've got people that are all into vanity. They do the Botox, they do everything like that. And so, of course, they're going to lose the weight. And then they do so, but they're still drinking their wine. They're not changing their diet. They're not changing their lifestyle habits. And now what I'm finding and what I'm hearing amongst the women of the town that are not diabetic is that it's getting more expensive to get the drug, and it's not even available for some people now because it's in a shortage of the supply. So there's a lot of discussion around Ozempic. So what I want to know from you is, how does it work? If you want to explain it one more time, because it is a bit confusing in the way it plays on insulin and glucagon. And is it worth it if you're not diabetic?
Yeah, and let me just say, I'm trying to get as much, and I want to say I'm not an expert in these anti-obesity drugs. I'm learning, and what I'm doing in my research review is just sharing my learning process with others. My area of expertise is dieting and exercise for fat loss. Obviously I'm not a medical physician, but there was too much chatter, too much activity around these I call them newer drugs, even though they've been around for well over a decade, but it seems like they have burst onto the scene in the last year. And as a fat loss researcher, I'm like, I can't put my head in the sand anymore. And I'm also concerned about fitness professionals, because those are the people that I love. And I know some of them are feeling threatened by this, because if there's a market for weight loss and fat loss, which there is, and now a drug is handling that for a large majority of these people, what does that do to the fitness professionals? I'm sure they have a little bit of justified anxiety and fear over how they are going to serve their clientele. And something else I've seen, and I want fitness professionals to be aware of this. The drug companies are not being shy about trying to discourage anybody from even trying exercise and dietary. Their message is clear. That won't work. Exercise and diet won't work. And that's not true. And my answer to that is, it is true to tell somebody, a physician, to tell an individual with obesity in their office, go exercise and eat less. That's not effective. But the people that I train in my university, the people that, I don't know if you help people directly with weight loss, but let's say you do, people like you, and I'll even throw out a kudos to my Body by Science subscribers, my Physique Coaching Academy students. If those are the people helping people with weight loss, weight loss, it would be much of a different outcome because it's individualized. It's not just a catch-all, do this. And even a lot of the research studies are, here's your program, eat less. And that's not effective, but individualized strategies and approaches would be much more effective. So I say all this to say the drug is here. The pharmaceutical companies are working against fitness professionals by declaring, and again, I see this. I have people reaching out to me a lot about this, and their doctors are pushing this. And again, I'm not against the drug at all. There are some people who I think should take this drug, see if they have unbearable side effects, and if not, the weight loss is very profound in many people. And I firmly believe excess adiposity is very healthy. And if you need a drug to do that, great. Now, I think this is a long-winded answer. I also want to say I agree with you. I am hearing a lot of people who actually need the drug for diabetes can't get it. Mm-hmm. And I'm getting reports, just had another conversation yesterday, a female 27.1 BMI, which I guess theoretically makes them eligible, at least on the study that I reviewed, that was included people with a BMI of 27 or greater, but very healthy, no health problems. I would call that a vanity use of the drug. She's getting it. And I know somebody else who has type 2 diabetes and they cannot get it. And that's, I would just think with all of the regulations that our medical system has, where's the regulation to make sure that people who need the drug for their disease are getting it and not people who are wanting it to lose some vanity weight?
Right. I agree. So what is you want to explain how it works and what is it working on the brain? Is it working on the gut?
Yeah. And I think I don't think that's clear yet. We know it works in both places. So let me explain. So our bodies produce a hormone called GLP-1, glucagon-like peptide 1. What we know what that does, and this is produced by the gut, the GI system. We know that at that level, at the GI tissues, what it will do is it will increase insulin. And what does insulin do? Well, one of insulin's, and I would say insulin's primary function is to lower blood glucose. So that's one thing that it does. So it will lower blood glucose because it acts on the pancreas to secrete insulin. The next thing that glucagon-like peptide 1 will do is it will increase glucagon. I'm sorry, it will decrease. So increases insulin, decreases glucagon. Glucagon will go to the liver and break down carbs, and that would typically increase blood glucose. So this GLP-1, when it lowers glucagon, that will also lower blood glucose levels. So it's lowering blood glucose levels through the regulation of two different hormones, lowering glucagon, increasing insulin. The other thing that it does is it slows the transit time of food in the stomach to circulation. So if you have a meal, it will slow down the gastric motility, which is basically the time that blood glucose would normally go through, or the carbs would normally go through and increase in the blood. This slows it down, meaning that we have a lower blood glucose response in our systemic circulation. So you can see a common theme here. GLP-1, which our bodies make naturally, does a lot of things to suppress glucose in the body. Increase insulin, decrease glucagon, and increase the transit time for food to be digested and then released into circulation. That's what we know GLP-1 does. The other thing that seems to be a little bit newer, and based on the latest research, and I mentioned a little bit of this on one of the more recent studies from the University of Florida, they are suggesting that GLP-1, well, we do know it acts on the brain, but the weight loss effects of GLP-1 are potentially pretty minor in the GI system and much more profound in the brain, where they're basically telling the brain, lower hunger, suppression of hunger. Now, there's a lot of, and I would say this is where there's a lot of pioneering research being done. How exactly is this being done? I'm still learning about this, but it does seem like most of the weight loss effects of GLP-1, which our bodies naturally produce, are being acted upon at the brain, and they're doing this by, I'll use an aggressive term, by basically killing appetite. It is suppressing appetite to very low levels. Some of the reports I'm getting is people have to set an alarm to remember to eat. Now, the drug, why would people take the drug, which is marketed as Ozempic and Wegovy? Those are the two most common, or the two most common. Semaglutide. Semaglutide is the drug, and its brand name is Ozempic and Wegovy. Why would people take those injections, and why can't our body just use GLP-1? And the answer is because the body's natural production of GLP-1 doesn't last long. It gets degraded within a few seconds or a few minutes. And the drug, which is chemically similar, so semaglutide is very chemically similar to GLP-1, it gets degraded, but it's like a week. It is active in the blood for up to about 7 days. So that's why we have weekly injections, because you're getting all of these effects of what GLP-1 could do if it were not degraded in the body. So there's a quick review of semaglutide and how we think it's working.
So a couple things that I've seen from personal friends who have taken it. One had an opportunity to try it for 2 weeks, but she didn't have the financial wherewithal to continue taking it. But she said, Sarah, for 2 weeks, I did not think about food. I was not chained to this obsessive thought about food. She lost 7 pounds, but the good news is after the 2 weeks, she actually kept her weight off. That is short term, and I understand using it as a tool if someone really has this relationship with sugar and food. Now, are there alternative supplements? Yes, I believe so. And I've put together my alternative protocol for Ozempic, and you can find that on my website, sarahbantahealth.com. But the second case was someone that started the semaglutide before anyone knew about it. So a couple of years ago, and she just stopped it because it got too expensive. But the other thing that happened, Bill, is she started using it as a crutch. She started realizing, hey, you know what? I'm taking this drug. It's okay if I eat all of this junk food. And so it started playing with her brain that she could get away with eating foods that she normally wouldn't have eaten. And she ended up gaining 15 pounds, still being on the drug. And she'd been on it for over 2 years. That was the other thing, that in some of the studies, the side effects, they didn't do the testing longer than 18 months, I believe. And so they really have not explored the long-term side effects. So wanted to mention that as well. It is a very controversial subject, but at the same time, if you can find supplements like berberine, the accelerated keto, which I use for my clients to help suppress appetite, calm the brain down, heal the gut, it gets your body's own appetite suppressant and regulation in check. So that was just really interesting to hear, to read your take on it and in your Body by Science review, because it's such a hot topic and everyone today is looking for results.
And let me just add 2 things. I haven't mentioned this yet. I haven't promoted it yet, but I'm going to, for my subscribers, I'm going to have at least one live session on a classroom where I want to bring everybody in to get somebody like you would be awesome, just to share what are we seeing with this. And I'm going to present the threats and opportunities to fitness professionals, because there are some really good opportunities for people as well, because the market is this, the way that I see it. There are people who don't want to take this. They're going to try one more time through diet and exercise before they go on the drug. So I'm actually helping somebody with obesity right now in that realm. 2, we have people on the drug that have lost significant amounts of weight, 10, 15, 20% of their body weight, who previously were not even in the arena for fitness. But now that they've lost a lot of body weight, they are now open to the idea. They're not as embarrassed. They can now maybe possibly go to a fitness center and fit in the equipment. So there's an opportunity. And then we have the people who, and this is debated, but there are a lot, 2 research reports, and I think I mentioned this in my summary. People are losing lean body mass, at least that's purported in some people, and the research would suggest that as well. More lean body mass than what we would expect with diet and exercise. So there we have another opportunity. People taking the drug, they actually they need an exercise program more to combat this, because now they're at a really increased risk for sarcopenia. So I'm going to talk about these just to give a brief overview of the drug, and I'm going to start promoting this soon. And again, that's for my subscribers, just to have kind of like a town hall. And then the second thing, which is related, you mentioned berberine, and I studied that a little bit last year, and that is that seems like I want to learn a lot more about that. But from what I did learn, and I don't know a lot about it, but boy, did that seem everything that it does. I remember one of the things, like it lowers blood glucose. That was one of the things naturally. Yeah. I think you said something about improving gut health. I don't remember reading that, but it wouldn't surprise me. I just remember being very impressed with berberine as a dietary supplement. And I don't remember there being any side effects with it.
No, there's not. And it doesn't, it rivals metformin. That's what it's been compared to. And it doesn't have the side effects of metformin, because metformin can also cause muscle loss as well, especially as we're getting older, as we were talking about before we came on. As you get older with age, that it's harder to keep on that expensive muscle. And a lot of people on these drugs, it's still confusing to me whether it's the fact that these people on semaglutide are not incorporating a higher protein diet and strength training, and that's why they're losing muscle mass, or is the drug actually causing muscle loss? And so that's interesting to me. Whereas what I've seen with the combination of the accelerated keto supplement that puts you into ketosis, but it also helps burn that liver fat and helps cleanse the liver, which is really important for your protein breakdown and fat absorption. But then it also allows you to intermittent fast and cut down the sugar cravings. That in conjunction with the berberine, which takes that insulin spike from a meal to just like a molehill, right? So it's helping with that, keeping that blood glucose in a normal range. That combination is magic. It's like this 1-2 punch to giving people these results and freedom from the chains of thinking about food all day. And people need to realize that those obsessive thoughts are coming from the fact that your brain is hooked to glucose for fuel. It doesn't know how to burn fat for fuel, and so it's looking for that glucose, and so you're constantly thinking about food, which leads me to another topic that you discussed, and that is overfeeding with low versus high protein diets. And I pound this into my clients: protein, 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 because number one, it's hard to convert protein to fat. Your body doesn't want to do it and wants to use it to build your tissues and your muscles. But what happened to body composition in your study when you overfed people with either a low versus a high protein diet?
So if you're talking about the study are you talking about the study that I did in resistance trained females?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I believe that was the first study ever done where we compared high versus low protein in a female population, and they were resistance training females. So what we did was we we had randomly assigned them, and they were all resistance training. We randomly assigned them to a high protein intake group, and they had to ingest at least, I think it was 2.4 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight, which is like 1.1 grams per pound. So a really high amount of protein. The other group, we said, you have to eat no more than 1.2 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. And that was around 0.5 grams per kg. So we had this big difference. We had somebody who couldn't go lower than 2.4 and somebody couldn't go higher than 1.2. So a big gap between the protein intakes. And what I thought would happen was, because we increased protein, I thought that the high protein group would naturally reduce their carbs and fat to kind of offset those extra calories. But they didn't. They added protein, which they actually had added almost 300 extra calories per day on average. And the low protein group, same thing. We thought, oh, they'll naturally increase their carbs and fat. They didn't. They lowered their protein, and they actually were in a slight caloric deficit. Mm. And at the end of the study, not surprisingly, because they were resistance training, and by the way, we supervised that study. So every single workout was supervised by our staff. So we know exactly, it was like a 90-some% adherence rate to the exercise. They all had an individual nutrition coach to help them, making sure that they were filling in all of their nutrition variables. So it was a very as controlled of a study as you can do in a free living population. And not surprisingly, the high protein group gained significantly more fat-free mass than the low protein group. That's not shocking because they were resistance training, and protein allows you to adapt optimally to that exercise stimulus. What was surprising was the high protein group, despite increasing their calories by nearly 300 calories per day, they lost a significant amount of body fat. Mm. And the low protein group, they maintained their lean body mass, but didn't gain as much. And I don't remember their body fat. I don't think also didn't significantly lower, even though they were in a slight caloric deficit. That was our study. Yes, it was like, wow, I didn't expect that, but it's not the only study to show that. There have been a handful of studies when you increase protein, and here's the key, in people who are resistance training, one of two things happen. They either lose body fat or they do not gain body fat. And when I say they increase protein, that implies they're actually increasing their total calories. So again, several studies have reported this. And I just did an Instagram post today on a different not my study, but it was very intriguing, an overfeeding study. And just again, the summary was, if you're going to overeat on protein, there really is no harm on this. And again, this always implies a healthy individual without kidney disease or metabolic issues.
And it's funny you say that about the kidneys, because I, for years, have been told, be careful with eating too much protein at one time. It's hard on your kidneys. But if I'm correct, and I saw a study that said that this was debunked and this is not true, my thought on that theory, and I'd love your intake, is that if you're eating a steak that has more than 30 grams of protein, because they say too much protein at one time is 30 grams or more, which most people are going to eat more than 30 grams of steak if they're sitting down to a steak dinner, that is digested very slowly, versus if you suck down quickly a whey protein shake full of 60 grams of protein. Do you have any thoughts on that? And I also wanted to ask about your opinion on adding extra whey protein to a diet and these shake type meals for bodybuilders or people that are trying to lose fat and gain muscle. So two separate questions there.
Yeah, so we definitely do have a difference in digestion kinetics. So whey protein versus a steak, it's going to be much more elongated, a slower release of amino acids from the steak. But interestingly, when in terms of muscle protein synthesis, which is what most people focus on when they're trying to build muscle, whether the protein is digested fast or slow, and this I'm relying on a study that compared whey protein versus casein protein. Casein's pretty slow relative to whey protein, which is digested very fast. What they found in that study was first 3 hours, whey protein increased muscle protein synthesis more than the casein. The next 3 hours, so like from hour 3 to hour 6, muscle protein synthesis was higher in the casein because it was in the stomach longer and then it was released into systemic circulation slower. So naturally, muscle protein synthesis was higher there. But when you compared the total 6-hour area under the curve for muscle protein synthesis, it was the same. Mm-hmm. So that study, as well as a few others that I rely on, I don't really care too much about if it's a fast or slow digesting protein, because at the end of the day, it matters how much total protein did you get. So that also, in my thinking, it really doesn't have, I don't put much of an emphasis on nighttime protein feeding for that reason. Some people do, and there's no harm. I just don't, I think there's limited benefit, or there's not a benefit, no harm. But I can't look at that research and say, yes, you should do this. If you want to do it, great. What was the second question?
As far as the effect on the kidneys, or if you're getting that huge bolus of whey protein quickly that's being digested quickly versus in a steak over a longer period of time.
Yeah. So relative to kidney health, I'm not aware of any research studies that would suggest that higher protein intakes are unhealthy. And so much so that and two reasons. One, I say this in my sports nutrition class first day to any student who can show me one study. And when I mean by study, an intervention study, I don't mean correlation studies, because you can make the same. Those you can make up essentially. You can say, well, look, this population did this and there was this outcome. So an intervention study where you have one group having high protein, another group with low protein. Give me a study, show me a study where that's been shown to be harmful, and you are done for the semester if you want. You get an A and you're done. And the reason I do that is because I tend to promote a higher protein diet. And the last thing that I want to do is be wrong. I do not want to be advocating for that. If there's any hint, if I have any doubt that it could be unhealthy to someone. Now, I always make the caveat, my research is in healthy people, generally younger, but sometimes older as well. So my world is really fit people. In terms of sedentary people, if they were to increase protein, I still think there's a benefit, particularly if they're exchanging more protein for less carbs. Mm-hmm. That there's multiple studies suggesting there's a body composition benefit there. But I do want to say, in a healthy population, that's where I live, and I have no I'm not aware of any research to suggest there is a kidney harm. And again, that was in the textbooks for years. I don't think I haven't seen it as much now, but never with any scientific validity. It was just stated, but there was never a validation of those statements with evidence.
That's exactly my experience, as I haven't seen anything to back that up lately. And what I have seen or read recently is that when you take someone that's sedentary and they're insulin resistant, if you prioritize protein, get rid of the processed foods, and their insulin resistance starts to reverse, they're going to naturally get off the couch because they now have the energy to go do something and start working out. So all of these things are connected. Okay, so we want to change our body composition. We want to lose fat. We want to maintain our muscle mass. Where does the fasted cardio fit into this equation? Fasted cardio.
So I'm aware of about 5, maybe 6 studies that have investigated this, and the evidence doesn't lend itself globally to say, yes, do this, you lose more body fat. Basically, if somebody's going to exercise, you look at the most important thing is the amount of calories burned during that bout of exercise, not necessarily on when. So we do have a study or two that says, hey, this looks a little better. Then we have a study or two that says, hey, this is actually detrimental. So taking globally, I can't say you should definitely do fasted cardio. But saying that, for some people, for myself, for many years, my lifestyle was such that I did fasted cardio. It worked for me. Did I do it because, hey, I think I'm burning more body fat? No, it just worked out best for my lifestyle and the timing of my morning cardiovascular exercise at that time. That being said, we also have to be aware of individual differences. Some people doing fasted cardio may have elevated hunger afterwards. Other people may have blunted hunger when doing fasted cardio. That's one thing I've learned. There's a lot of individual variation with how exercise tends to impact hunger levels. Now, a lot of that is short-lived, meaning that just because you feel hungry today after fasted cardio, doesn't mean that that's how it will be after 2 or 3 weeks of adapting to that. So yeah, in summary, fasted cardio, the evidence is not overwhelming. And you can make an argument for either, but I don't discourage people from doing it if it fits into their lifestyle.
Well, let's take cardio in general versus resistant training or a combination. What would your protocol be for someone who comes to you and says, I want to lose body fat and maintain muscle?
So I would ask that person, are they comfortable? Do they hate doing cardio? If they hate doing cardio, I'm not going to force them to do cardio. But if they are open to the idea, they are going to experience greater fat loss by implementing cardio. And if they are a new to fitness, they've never exercised before, and the only thing they do is just cardio, let's say there's no dieting, no resistance training, they're going to see two things. They're going to lose body fat from that aerobic activity, and they're going to maintain more lean mass. And that's pretty, a lot of people don't appreciate this. Aerobic exercise, now it's not as good as resistance training, but aerobic exercise will preserve lean mass better than dieting. So if you're going to, let's say you're going to induce an energy deficit of 500 calories, you can do that through dieting, or you can do that through increased cardio. Increased cardio is the better choice because of almost all of the body weight, or I would say all of the body will come from body fat stores. Whereas if you do the same caloric deficit from diet, you're going to lose some lean tissue. Plus, the cardio, the aerobic exercise, gives us all of those other health benefits, improving insulin sensitivity, improving mood, increasing bone mineral density, or at least suppressing its loss, helping with depression, helping with digestion, helping with long-term hunger. The list goes on and on and on with aerobic exercise. Now, I'm somebody who doesn't love aerobic exercise. I do more of it now than I used to, but aerobic exercise it's great for fat loss. It's underappreciated for fat loss. And in sedentary people, it will preserve lean tissue. And something else that I love learning this, because I didn't know this until about 2 years ago. If you have somebody who's sedentary, doing no activity, they have dysregulated appetite. That means they're hungry after they've eaten, hungry when they wake up. And if you can get that person to engage in some type of aerobic activity, what happens is they now will start to have a regulated appetite. So they'll stop eating when they're full, and they won't be hungry in between meals. Again, that research. So the best thing you can do for somebody's hunger is aerobic exercise. Same data is not there with resistance exercise.
Yeah, and I do a combination of both. I've got 2 dogs that force me to take them on runs in the morning, and if I don't, they'll get after me. But I love lifting weights because, especially as a woman, as you're getting older, just feeling strong, and the muscles are so important for longevity. But I do love the fact that light exercises, you've talked about this, that you burn mostly fat, and higher intense exercises, you're primarily burning carbohydrates during that exercise, but then the after effects of increased muscle mass is going to allow you to burn fat and more calories at a higher rate. Am I correct on that?
Yes.
Okay. So real quick, because we're almost out of time, I just want to mention a couple of the supplements that will enhance your fat loss along with these protocols. And I mentioned the accelerated keto that maintains your muscle mass and gets your body burning the body fat right away. It increases ATP production by 10 times. And that ATP is your mitochondrial health that will increase the fat burn, the fat oxidation, cleansing the liver, detoxing the liver, so you have better fat burn and better muscle and protein synthesis. And then when you add in the acceleradine iodine, which increases ATP production by 18 times in all 100 trillion cells of your body and help with hypothyroidism and metabolic rates, that's going to help with your energy so that you have the energy to go out and do what we're talking about. And then, of course, accelerated salt, which is giving you all the 62 minerals that you need. And Bill, this is something that we should talk about next time, is when you are hydrated with electrolytes, you actually have more energy to have better output in the gym or in your cardio routines. But before we go, Bill, you've got a couple things. The Body by Science, which is fantastic for everyone to want to subscribe to and read, but you also have something really exciting coming up with Layne Norton. You want to tell everyone about that?
Yeah. So my Body by Science, if you're interested in that, just go to my website. It's billcampbellphd.com. It's a research review. I summarize 2 research articles. I bring in experts to help apply the research. It's all about losing body fat and building muscle mass. And again, that's billcampbellphd.com. And then I created a course with Dr. Layne Norton, and the course is called Physique Coaching Academy. And we believe that it is the best course on the planet for training fitness professionals whose primary clientele is body composition. So helping clients lose body fat, gain muscle, and doing so with the evidence-based literature. So we have a lot of research in there. We teach our students how to critically evaluate and read the research, and then serve their clients with the evidence that we have. A lot of the stuff we talked about today is in the course to help clients lose body fat and build muscle.
Amazing. And we'll have the link to your website in the show notes. So check it out. And these 2 experts, there's no one that would even rival them when it comes to this topic. So thank you, Bill. And thank you, everyone else, for joining us today. If I can help you with your health issues, you can contact me directly through the website, sarabantahealth.com. Happy to put together a protocol for you. Join my free group with the Telegram link below. There's no downside. I teach you on a daily basis with tips and tools to enhance your health, and you will be a part of a like-minded group. You can follow me on Facebook and Instagram under Accelerated Health Products, and across over 100 channels under Accelerated Health TV and radio show, including this podcast. And my goal, like I mentioned before, is truly to reach everyone on earth with the eyes to see and the ears to hear my message of healing. So please help me with that goal and share this podcast with a few of your friends. And join us every Monday at 2 p.m. Pacific, Tuesdays at 1 p.m. Pacific. You can use coupon WELCOME10 for 10% off site-wide. Thanks again for joining us here, and have a great week. Thanks, Bill.